Chapter 88 to 91. Dennis Corbray, I said. From opposite me, Jane nodded stiffly. She was still nervous, I could tell, and my attempts to distract her with gossip were not going well. How is he related to Gon? His third son, she said. But it is not for his links with his father I chose him. Is it his dashing good looks? I asked, teasing before I had properly thought the action through. Thankfully she did not take offense, merely puling a face. Whilst I am informed by those with an interest in such things he is quite handsome, I chose him for his friendship with John Harding, she said tartly. I scooped up my wine and took a sip as I digested that statement. John Harding had been Laener's veil fling. The two had exchanged letters for a few months after the fact, but even the friendship fizzled out after Joffrey's return to Laener's life. He knows about Jess? I asked and she nodded. He does not mind my lady and I do not mind his knight. He has assured me he is capable of producing heirs. I hope for a relationship similar to your own marriage, Jane said. When I almost choked on my wine her eyes widened. I meant that we would be friends, I am not implying you to be attracted to women. I'd never told her about my interest in Lena. Would she feel betrayed I had not shared it with her? I took a deep breath and laid my glass down on the table opposite us. You would not be too far off though, I told her, blood rushing to my cheeks and heart pounding nervously. Her eyes widened and then she sat forward herself, her glass joining mine a moment later. For my lover is a woman. Love, a woman, she breathed. For how long? Is this new? Relatively new. She is the only woman I have ever felt this way for. Jane studied me for a second then sat back. Well. I did not expect that, she said finally. Who? Lena, I replied. Laener's sister. That's convenient. Does she like women or just you? Asked Jane. I smiled, despite my flushed cheeks. She likes women, I confirmed and Jane's grin widened in response. But she is taken, cousin. By you. Jane giggled. I struggled not to smile like an idiot as Jane collapsed into giggles. Instead, I settled for sipping at my wine to hide my far too pleased expression. We fell into a companionable silence after that, friends once again and rift between us closed. Even her demand of a royal marriage in return for her own marriage no longer rankled. The Vale was as fine a place as any and any son of Jane's would at least be raised properly. Had I married her to Kermit Tully, or his brother, I fancy Alice would have spent most of her time preventing one disaster or another from setting her husband's lands on fire. What is this? Said my aunt as she stepped into the room. Beside me, Jane choked on the sir in surprise. I could feel the sudden tension radiating off her as her breathing picked up slightly. That she had even gone to Runestone after the siege of the Eyrie when I pushed her to was a miracle. A discussion, I said politely and gestured for Rhea to take a seat on the opposite side of the table. I'd lured her to the manse on the pretext of babes. I had merely failed to mention I would have an accounting from her of the whole marriage business first. I see. I believe I know what about. Jane told you about the September. Of course I did. Jane burst out, fists clenched on the table. Why did you not? Rhea sighed and dropped into the chair opposite us, looking pale and tired suddenly. Jane's anger seemed to stutter at the sight but it did not die. She clenched her jaw and squared her shoulders although I could see the start of tears forming in her eyes. You have to understand, she said finally. I had no other choice. Then perhaps you could explain your position, I said, reaching over and squeezing Jane's hand. She spared me a small smile but it was brief and she still looked troubled after. Rhea massaged at her temples before taking a deep breath. It was not easy being married to Daemon Targaryen, she said finally. He was not a gentle man, or indeed, a kind man. I was not what he envisioned in a bride. He made it clear he'd wished for a Valyrian at the very least. He spoke of you being suitable even then, Rhaenyra. Indeed, he spoke of Lena being more suitable than I. That got my heart hammering. My father granted me a small estate to start my family on. It was poisoned gift, it was understood Daemon would be the lord and master of it, not I. He controlled the purse strings, the servants, everything. Including you, I did not say. But soon even the petty victories he won over me entertained him no more. He was beginning to petition his father to return to King's Landing. Father was furious that there was no heir on the way, he blamed me, of course. Next to me Jane shifted uneasily, her hands tangled in her skirts as she pulled nervously at them. When Prince Balon died, Daemon left anyway, no matter how much I bargained and begged, she continued after a moment of gathering herself. Father wanted me to follow him, he demanded I accompany him to the Great Council. But Damon did not attend the Great Council, I said, slowly. He was confined to the capital and even then he managed to raise trouble. Yes, it rather put father on the back foot, she chuckled, but it was bitter and dark. What happened then? Asked Jane. Nothing changed for 2 years and then suddenly, Damon was brother of the king and, at the time, believed to be his heir. Father was over the moon, of course. Queen Emma had not had living child since Rhaenyra. He was so sure that Damon would be king one day that he began to get greedy. Both Jane and I had scowls at that as she paused to swallow, as if the action were painful. He began to get greedy. That's when he began pushing the marriage with Willem. He dismissed my ladies then. Except you, said Jane in a small voice. I remember that. He should not have done. It tipped your aunt to something in the works. She had already been pushing for you to be fostered with her. When Ybert said no and dismissed every lady but me from your service, she wrote to the faith with her husband's blessing. She gave strict orders that your marriage was to be approved by the crown. The High Septon commanded those in the Vale to refuse to marry you. According to the Septon, your mother had gone as far as to add threats to her missive. I could not imagine my mother, quiet and gentle, angry enough to write threats. To the High Septon no less. Mother had been as devout as the good queen. The first thing she had ever read to me was the 7-pointed star. Beside me, Jane was scrubbing at her face, trying to control her tears. Father did not realize what she had done, of course, until that day in the September, she told us. Willem was so angry. I don't care about any of that. Why did you agree? Demanded Jane, crying properly now. You were my last lady. You were supposed to be my friend. Rhea actually flinched before lowering her gaze. I was scared. Father was on the verge of having me banished from the Vale, cutting me off entirely from any protection my name gave, but for what Damon was willing to give me, she said quietly. Willem promised that would not happen. Bullshit. She was yelling now, on her feet. I wanted to reach out and calm her, but it was not appropriate. I heard you. You said something about a high price. Damon's demands, muttered Rhea. He wanted me to play host to a mistress. To treat her as she were my lady. To play the servant in my own home. He knew not even father would countenance that. Jane dropped into the chair and glared at her, trembling slightly with the force of her rage. So you sacrificed me for your fucking pride, said Jane, bitterly. You could have borne the humiliation. Could you? He hurt me. He would dash. I wanted to vomit as the implications of her words sank in. Had I bowed to that demand, he never would have stopped. It would have always been one thing more. Nothing more than seeing me utterly broken for daring to stand in his way would have satisfied him. You didn't have to sacrifice me though, she sniffled. You could have gone to my aunt. She would have protected us both. You could have taken us there. I very much doubt she could have. Ybert would have raised the Vale for his meal ticket and Rhea, younger Rhea, would have been as sheltered as any noble. Add in the mountain clans and it was like to be a disaster. You were not in danger, I swear. He would have done nothing, pleaded Rhea. Willem was not. He was brash, stupid and arrogant beyond measure, but he was content with his whores. I still would have been stuck with him, she argued, voice raising in volume once again. A man who I did not love, who did not love me, he would have ruled me. The queen would have stepped in. You would have had rain dash. And you are making excuses, Jane screamed. Rhea's teeth snapped shut so hard I heard them clack. You sold me to him to protect yourself. He would have kept me as Damon kept you. In that you are wrong, said Rhea. He would have been infinitely kinder than Damon. Then she caught my look and sighed, eyes closing once more. But you are right. I used the trust you had in me as your lady and led you into a trap you had little chance of escaping. I regretted it the moment I had done it. I told myself he would have done it anyway, that at least you would have me at your side. I told myself it was to save myself, that you would understand one day. I told myself many lies, but they were lies. She paused for a moment. Jane was breathing heavy, tears still trickling down her face. I was not much older than you and I was scared. I took the easy way out. I have well earned your hate. In truth, I was surprised we even reached the relationship we had before. Jane crossed her arms and glared out for the window for a while. I didn't dare break the silence. Jane needed to come to her own decision in this. I had already interfered more than was strictly proper. It was for the veil's sake, she said finally. It was easier when you were not there. You are a good woman, Jane. Better than I ever could be. I will always be your woman. Be it swords, an ear, or advice, I shall give it freely, she said. I can only give that and hope that someday, it makes up for what I did. There was silence after that, broken only by Jane's hiccuping sobs. Finally, though, she managed to bring herself back into the room. You will remain in King's Landing, she said quietly after a few shuddering breaths. You will look after our interests here. Rhea winced and nodded. But I would like it much if we were to continue our correspondence. That brought tears to Rhea's eyes and she nodded furiously. My cousin turned to me and gave me a weak smile. I cannot say I am glad for the mess you have stirred up, but perhaps you are right. Perhaps I needed to confront this. She took another shuddering breath. Mayhaps it will stop hurting so much. Mayhaps the nightmares will stop. I am sorry, whispered Rhea. Jane stared at her. Did I ever say that? Words cannot convey how sorry I am. Jane stood suddenly. I must go, she choked out. Thank you, Rhaenyra, call upon me tomorrow. And then she fled and my aunt and I were left alone. Rhea tapped along the armrest for a while and then sighed heavily. I gave an accounting, she said. You did not tell me. You should have done, I replied. I had no right to be bitter. Jane was the injured party here and yet, she hadn't told me. I have become quite fond of you. I did not expect that, she said after a pause. I expected to find a spoilt princess as bad as the uncle she supposedly slept with. Yet you were just a child. I bristled at that and she waved a hand, preventing me from protesting. You are a woman grown with babes of her own, but when you told me your tale in Runestone, you seemed so young. Then you actually came to look up to me. You wanted advice from me. She grimaced as if in pain. I wanted that just a little longer. It was selfish of me, but I wanted you to hold me in high esteem a little longer. She looked miserable, half slumped over in her chair. My heart ached for all that I knew I should be angry. No, it was not my place to punish her or judge her. I do not know what I would have done in her place. Jane is the one she owes the debt to, and if I know Jane, she'll extract a high price in recompense. Well, I know now, I said finally. Now I believe I promised you a visit with the babes. Her startled eyes flickered up to meet mine. Truly, she asked. Yes, truly. Although I do hope you're brought ear protection. Jocelyn is in fine form today. Rhea Royce's wedding was possibly one of the most well-attended ceremonies in recent history, barring my own wedding over 2 years ago now. Nearly every Lord Paramount in the Seven Kingdoms and their principal bannermen were present. There were a few who did not show. Lord Willem Tyrell had always been prone to sickness and had, predictably, sent a raven to excuse himself from the upcoming war council. It was muttered in some circles that he was less sickly and more a craven, not wanting to anger vassals far more powerful than himself. Regardless of the reason, he would not be coming to the capital. Father would have to choose a representative for the Reach. I had no doubt it would be a Hightower of some description, the only question remained who. The other notable exception was Lord Hagen Greyjoy. No reply had been forthcoming after the Ravens were sent with their invitations despite Otto's certainty they would be willing to use their fleet to raid the Dornish coast. I, myself, doubted he would pass the opportunity up as well. It did not matter, I very much doubted Rhea wanted him present. I had never met him, but I had been told he was unpleasant, even for an Ironborn. True or not, Rhea was probably better off if he arrived after her marriage. As to the ceremony itself, lavish was the key word. Viserys had offered to fund the feast and festivities, no doubt causing poor Lord Lyman to begin weeping given the man had been desperately trying to cut expenses to fund the war with Dorne. Father had been insistent though. In his view, Rhea had been given a grand ceremony once before, one I had apparently attended as a newborn babe even, but that had ended in tears and, well, a town on fire. I think this was Father's way of apologizing to her. A way of saying that House Targaryen owed her a really, really fancy wedding at least. Stop fretting, snapped one Rhea's sisters as the Lady of Runestone twisted to look at herself in the mirror once more. I am not fretting, merely checking, she mumbled back, blushing halfway through as she realized she was indeed fretting. I covered my smile of amusement and made myself look busy by helping her youngest sister arrange the cloak she wore in her colors along her shoulders. I had to admit, her sisters did good work for all that I suspected at least one of their number did not wish this marriage to go ahead. That would be Scylla, the mother of Rhea's current heir presumptive, Gunthor Royce, and the future bearer of Lamentation, Will Royce. I had no clue who had Lamentation at the moment or even where it was. Although, if I knew my aunt, as like as not it was sealed in a vault in Runestone. Lamentation was a powerful symbol as to the rulership of Runestone, she would not allow anyone but herself to possess it. Potential family issues aside, Rhea was resplendent. Her dark hair had been combed until it gleamed and plaited into an intricate style she wore as if it were some sort of crown, more regal than father or Alicent or even both put together. The cloak that laid about her shoulders was no maiden's cloak, for Rhea was not a maiden, but it was beautiful. The rich fabric a deep bronze and looking as if it were liquid metal about her shoulders. Underneath it, Rhea wore a sheer black dress, very much in the veil style. She had edged it in bronze. These supported stems of yet more bronze, the ends of which had been beaten into the shape of the runes House Royce so prided itself on. Armor, I realized, she is wearing her own version of the Royce's famous bronze armor. In all fairness, I reflected as we accompanied Rhea into the September, Torin Mandoli was every inch the giddy husband to be. Right down to the looking sick with nerves expression. He was also dressed to the nines in his own house colors, for all that he would soon be Lord Royce. I took my seat next to Laenor as Septon Eustace began his long, droning speech. I let my attention wander from Eustace's dry delivery of the traditional marriage ceremony and picked Jane out. She was sitting at the front, a man I did not recognize by her side. I suspected he was Dennis Corbray solely due to a passing similarity to Ser Jeremy, but I could not be sure. Jane's face was a mask, inscrutable from where I was sitting, as she watched the couple recite their vows. When Rhea and Torin finally sealed their union with a kiss, it was the northern contingent that cheered the loudest, led by a man who could only be Ser Medric, Torin's older brother and heir to White Harbor. I did not miss the small smile that flickered across Jane's features though. She was not a cruel woman, she could hold a grudge until it died of old age, but she was not a cruel woman. And if the gods were kind, Rhea and Jane could grow closer now on an even footing, without the specter of the September hanging over both of them. I joined in the cheering but studied the crowd, picking Gunthor out easily. He could not keep the scowl from his face or keep the resentment from his half-hearted clapping, I noted with some annoyance. He was Gunthor Coldwater in truth, his mother having married out of the family, yet he had styled himself as Gunthor Royce since he had reached his majority with no sign of an heir for Rhea. Rhea had let him because, well, who could have predicted Daemon's idiocy? I did not have much sympathy for his misfortune. He was not even a particularly clever man and, if the canon timeline could taken into account, he would have made a poor lord of Runestone. After all, it was sheer luck that Runestone had not been burned around his ears. I say sheer luck because relying on a daughter of Daemon Targaryen for restraint and tact in the face of the murder of the man she had, in all probability, loved was probably not the best strategy. I was not worried he would manage to somehow usurp Rhea by himself, but he could be a potent force of disruption in the Vale if someone wished to weaken my allies. Perhaps he could be offered a position to prove himself in Dorne, far away from my aunt as she tried for her babe. No, she'd realize what I was doing straight away. As much as it made my teeth itch, Gunthor was one problem I could not solve without making another one. Namely, Rhea going ballistic at me. I'd already pushed things by spying on Torin. After the ceremony came the feast. "You look grim, Rhaenyra," said Laenor in a low voice as I scowled at the stuffed goose one too many times. "Is the food not to your liking?" The food was fine. Exquisite even, although given the amount Laenor had stuffed his face with, he no doubt knew that. "I am merely frustrated, husband," I replied in an almost whisper after checking to see no one was too interested in the realm's delight. The slight stress I put on the word husband had him smiling even wider. The man knew well how to bait me, curse him. A toast from Ser Medric's table distracted me from the impulse to kick him in the ankle in revenge. I wish to secure our support, to ensure our children do not see war. Yet all these oafs wish to speak of is Dorne, I replied finally. His eyes softened and he laid his knife down to pat the back of my hand. We will get there. In a year we have all but annihilated the Greens and gained control of the court. When the war for Dorne is over, we can build upon that foundation, he said gently. He sighed when I said nothing, unable to give words to whirl of emotions and fears inside of me. We placated Boros, we have the reins and the errands on our side in no small part to the efforts you have put in recently, he pointed out. The Crownland lords are yours and Grover Tully is like to follow if he has any sense in his head. Yet he ignores my overtures and plays host to one of my brothers, I pointed out. It may be the Tullus are not the finest ally anyway. They likely ignored us because they know getting involved will see their lands burn. Either between our army from the Vale or her army from the Westerlands. Yet if we ensure the north is black, the Riverlands will likely fall in line too, he began. The north we can win with our glass and the Westerlands we can hamstring with the Rains and likely, the Marbrands. It would be every kingdom against, at most, the Reach and Dorne. I sighed. It seems too good to be true. We only have the Vale and the Rains for certain. If I never birth a boy or if Alicent plays the marriage game astutely, we could lose our advantage very easily, I mumbled finally. We will deal with challenges as they come, he said. Together. All four of us. You are trying to placate me, I realized, and he blushed a little. And Joffrey put you up to it. Lena, actually, he replied glibly and received an elbow to the side. But you are sulking for nothing. Merely speaking to them all will leave an impression of you in their minds. Since Aegon is too young to do the same and Alicent too, guarded, you shouldn't need to do much. Just mingle, chat them up a bit and make it personal. Could it truly be that simple? I wondered, spearing a bit of goose and liberally scooping up sauce. Mingle, said Laenor slowly as I chewed. Mix with people, I said once I'd swallowed. He shook his head, bemused. I shall never tire of the things you say sometimes, Rhaenyra, he said finally, fond smile in place. Then he stopped as if remembering something and leaned in, conspiratorially. Did Lena speak to you of her plan? He asked. With Joffrey? I sighed. He'd managed to go a surprisingly long time without harassing me about it. I think it's delightful, I said. A sibling for Lucerys in a year or so. Another potential dragon rider to strengthen House Velaryon. Laenor tapped his knife against his face thoughtfully and smeared sauce across his cheek, causing me to choke on my wine in amusement. A baby Joffrey, he said finally. Do you think one of our children might be engaged to his one day? I froze halfway through putting my wine back down. That had not even crossed my mind. My eyes sought out the back of Lena's head. She was turned away from me, sitting next to Joffrey, and absorbed in conversation with Lady Elenda. The Lady of the Stormlands was frowning slightly and Joffrey had his arm securely about her waist. The gods only know what they were discussing. No, a marriage between our children would be too weird. Besides, as much as Laenor wanted to downplay marriage alliances, they were the best way to make sure you damn well had an alliance. My next son would be Boros and my next daughter. Well, it might be worth playing for the North or the Riverlands again at some point. We cannot afford it, I mumbled. He pursed his lips and then shrugged. Joffrey said something similar. His tone was slightly sheepish and I smiled despite myself. How does Joffrey feel about having another babe with Lena? He blinked and then caught on a second later. He is cautiously excited. He did not expect to love Lucerys with the intensity he does. Did you know Lucerys is saying "dada" now? He is. Joffrey is over the thrilled. He dragged me into the nursery the other day to show me, but he hesitated, then took a deep breath and forged on. There is always the potential that Lena is barren. He does not wish to invest himself in a child that may never come. Ah yes. Yet one more reason for Joffrey to keep investigating. I thoroughly intend to make our mystery poisoner drink his own medicine one of these days. After Laenor's little pep talk, I made my towards the northern contingent, eager to hint at my future glass production, only to find myself utterly waylaid by one Lord Roland Rain. Your Grace, he said. He was a handsome man with the famous red hair of the Rains. He had been married by the time my hand was available, so to speak, so I had never had the pleasure of much of his attention before. Now this man's son would be married to Jocelyn. He would be one of my principal allies in the days to come. I needed to know him. I needed to know which way he would jump or how he would react in certain situations. But not right now. Right now I wanted to continue my push for more allies with Lord Rickon. Lord Rain was not a complete unknown to me, I reflected when he refused to take the hint. His son was called Rolf. The boy had just passed his first name day and had been left in the arms of his mother, a Marbrand by birth, as his father traveled to the capital to join his liege lord in discussion for the war and to, secretly, sign the betrothal that would see his house secure a royal marriage. Providing something disastrous did not happen, Jocelyn's betrothal would be announced alongside Alice on her 10th name day. When Rolf was old enough, he would squire under Laenor and Lord Roland would pay through his nose for the prestige. Both that and the marriage would bring his family in turn, if I had anything to do with it. I could not rely on only Valerian gold to fund my efforts in the dance should Tywin Lannister make off with the entire treasury again. That had already been proved to me with the burning of Spicetown. Indeed, it was partially rebuilt and Corlys was still having to cut corners and take out loans. Lord Roland, how are you finding the feast? I asked, focusing on him. He gave me a wide smile. Well enough, I've found myself quite looking forward to weddings recently, he chuckled, and I tried not to twitch at the insinuation. Joyous occasions. I wish Lady Royce every happiness she can find. I'm sure she appreciates that, my lord, I replied, unsure of why he'd actually waylaid me. Gauging my reaction perhaps? Checking to see if the betrothal was still set to be agreed. Mind you, Lord Jason's been enthusiastic about marriage recently as well, his voice was nearly a growl at that, his cheer false and barely able to mask it. I paused, examining that phrase. You believe he expects one in the future? I asked, and the red-headed lord shrugged. You know as little as I do then, he asked, and realization smacked me in the face. Indeed. I would look to the Vale for future weddings. I'm told Lady Jane may finally announce she's picked a suitor she likes the look of, I told him, and he did not manage to mask his look of surprise. And here I thought she was betting every man in the Vale first, he sneered, and my smile became slightly fixed. I assure you my cousin is innocent of such accusations. She merely has particular tastes, namely men who will not try and rule her. Roland scowled. No man ought to let a woman rule him. Then his eyes widened as I frowned. In marriage, your grace. A woman with a title is the ruler of her lands, of course. Indeed, my tone was chilly, and he suddenly looked very on edge. If this was a view he passed on to his son, Laenor would be set to showing him differently from the moment he set foot on Dragonstone. Have I mentioned that my girls have been presented with dragon eggs? Jocelyn's is a gift from Lady Rhaenys. Truly, your grace. Dragons are a different matter entirely. Dragons rule men. His excuse did not hide the fact that he looked as if he wanted to dive out of the window over his misstep and my threat. Ah. I do believe Sarah Laster is attempting to gain my attention. I watched as he retreated into a nearby crowd, unsure of who Sarah Laster was or if he were even in the room. Eyes would have to be kept on Roland and his son. I would not marry Jocelyn to a man who thought her beneath him like Lord Roland evidently viewed women. Then I made my way over to the northern contingent in time to see Bernard and Boros start up an arm wrestling match. Curious, last I had checked Boros was in a fine temper about the northern cowards refusing to send any real force south, citing issues at the wall and logistical problems brought about by winter. Lord Rickon, it is a pleasure to see you here. The elderly Lord of Winterfell dragged his eyes from his much younger brother's display and looked up at me, before giving me a barely respectful bow. I ignored the disrespect and seated myself next to him. Lord Rickon was not a big man in the way his brother was. He was slim, and age had only eaten away at his build. He boasted a thick, wiry gray beard and longer hair tied back in a tail of a similar shade. Even his eyes seemed tired as he examined me in the same way I was doing to him. Your Grace, he grunted by way of greeting when he realized I was not going away. How may I serve you? Perhaps a conversation. I do believe we have never spoken in much depth. Humph, you don't want to speak with me, you want to gauge how loyal I am to you, he said. I had expected blunt from this man. He was famous for eschewing southern politics even in the face of his own brother's insistence that he should get involved and let the murder of Walton Stark go. There had been 5 different lords since then, and all of them had been angry about the mutineers. Then I shall dispense with politeness also. I want your allegiance should anyone threaten my crown, and I can provide boons in turn that will aid the North, I replied, surprised that I was so close to losing my temper with this impolite curmudgeon. What boons could a southern princess possibly provide? Will you magic away the winter? Promise to return what is rightfully ours? Or will you use the North as your dumping ground for the unwanted again? Send your criminals and traitors to the North and forget about them as they damage us in turn, he sneered. Or will you offer me the hand of one of your daughters for my son? So that you can throw northern lives onto the blades of those that rise up against you. There was a small bubble of silence spreading from us now. Even Bernard and Boros had ceased their shenanigans to stare at the elderly Lord of the North and his heated words. I am willing to offer more than vague promises, I said. I am willing to give glass for glass houses to the North, I am willing to give northern lords political appointments, and I am willing to support the wall with food and gold. Ha! Glass houses? You would saddle every house in the North with enough debt to sink them, and we do not require your political appointments. Leave, princess. If you and your brother wish to fight like children over a throne, the North will not involve itself. Angry and embarrassed I left, feeling like a child that had just been given a public dressing down in front of all their peers. I did not need to Northerners anyway. Perhaps I might have better luck with the Greyjoys, who had arrived recently and refused point-blank to engage in any politics. Their entire contingent had taken up residence in one of Joffrey's brothels and refused to leave. I was assured they were making quite the nuisance of themselves there. I got halfway back to the high table when someone caught my arm and pulled me back. Angry, I turned to let them have it only to find myself face to face with Bernard Stark. I apologize for my brother, Your Grace. I insist you not come away with the impression that all Starks and Northerners are so impolite, he said. Just my brother, I'm afraid. I assure you I am not the old grump he is. My eyebrows rose at that and I had to wonder what could create two completely different people. He led me to the dancers, caught me about the waist and managed to lead me through a dance without stepping on my toes. Admittedly he lacked the grace Laenor did. As we danced, none paid attention to us. Each were more caught up in their own conversations or partners, but he still lowered his voice all the same. I am also not as ignorant as he is when it comes to the goings-on of southern politics and families. I have heard rumors that soon the Myrish may not be the only ones producing glass of a sufficient enough quality to be used in the construction of a glass house. He framed it as a question, but I could tell it was more of a statement. And now that House Manderley has links with you through Lady Rhea Royce, a certain family may be willing to cut the price of such glass for your most loyal subjects. Generous discounts and, perhaps, rich gifts, I replied, and his eyes almost sparkled with delight. I try to be a very good friend to those loyal, after all. We Northerners are fiercely loyal creatures, Your Grace. Fiercely, he said with a rakish grin, and I stiffened as I realized he was flirting with me. The idea of it brought heat to my cheeks. It was pleasing after spending so long feeling like a useless lump, even if Lena was always quick to demonstrate her attraction when I grumbled about it. But perhaps I can demonstrate our fierceness in solving this issue we have with Dorne? I have no objections to Northern allies in the upcoming war, but I was under the impression Lord Rickon was struggling to bring his troops south. At the seemingly innocent question I did not miss his eyebrows draw together in anger. Not as much trouble as he makes out. I offered to take a few thousand men who wished to go to relieve the burden on their families this winter, and my brother denied me the use of his ships, his gold, and his guard. I tried not to look surprised he was even admitting this. That came dangerously close to treason, after all. Lord Boros has offered to equip us should we join him, but I still need gold and ships. I let my eyes flicker to the high table where Laenor was sipping at his wine and watching us both, eyes wary. I gave him a smile, then tilted my head to the main doors. He caught my message and rose, disappearing from the hall a moment later. Ships I can probably manage. Gold is a dicier prospect. Come, let us speak with my husband. He was waiting for us in a small alcove, evening light casting him in gold. As we reached him, he caught me by the waist and dropped a kiss to my lips. I did not miss Bernard's chuckle at the sight. I also did not miss the firm look he directed at the Northern Lord afterwards. Bernard wishes to bring some Northern troops south, but his brother, awfully rude to me by the way, is denying him access to ships and funding. Indeed, Ser Laenor, your wife hinted you may be able to help with transport. Bernard said. We still have a few cogs we designed to ferry troops back and forth. In truth, our shipyards have been focusing on rebuilding the galleys we lost, he explained. Father is eager to have our naval dominance of the narrow sea back. If I can get the gold, will you allow us use of the ships? He asked. Laenor studied him for a moment and then nodded. You will not be able to bring a huge amount of troops. A few thousand at most, he warned him. I have about 2,500 men that will follow me to Dorne. Do not worry, Your Grace, what we lack in numbers we make up for in skill and ferocity. There was no more flirting in his tone now that Laenor had so obviously marked his territory. I have long held Northerners in high esteem, Bernard. I have no doubt you can impress even Lord Boros with your skill. If you can obtain the gold, Laenor reminded him, hand possessively winding around my waist. I'll work on it, do not worry. With ships and equipment lined up I can get some of my brother's lords well interested, he told us. Then he smiled widely. Now, I believe I have to test that Stormlander bastard's arm once more. Good day, Your Grace, Ser Laenor. Laenor insisted on dancing with me for the rest of the feast, something which quite honestly surprised me. He'd never shown a trace of jealousy over me before, not when the River Lords had competed for my hand or when Harwin Strong had all but slobbered over me in the same room as him. Yet for some reason Bernard Stark had him all but peeing on me to mark his territory. I knew it was Bernard specifically because every now and again, he would direct a glare over to the northern contingent. He knew where my heart lay, so why had this got him up in arms? When I asked him as such he looked extremely disgruntled. You were blushing, he finally muttered when I pushed. You only blush with Lena and I. So you had to beat your chest like a monkey from Sotheris to warn him off? I asked, more amused than offended. He flushed at the implication but I felt his hands tighten on my waist. As I recall this time a year and a half ago you were all for me making new friends. You found a friend, in Lena, he whispered directly into my ear causing gooseflesh to rise across my arms. And you are the mother of my children. A year and a half ago, I did not think that possible. And now you are ready to leap to defend my honor, I teased. Be still my beating heart. You realize, of course, he was only doing it in the hopes I'd ply him with ships and gold. He shouldn't do it at all, Laner grumbled but let the matter lie for the rest of the night. Verbally, at least, but he left no man in the hall unaware that any rumors of my availability to other men were just that, rumors. As it turned out, he was not the only Valerian sibling that had taken notice of Bernard Stark's flirting. Lord Stark's brother seemed quite taken with you, Lena observed after the feast. I paused in my attempts to clean myself, dropping the cloth into the basin. He was quite the charmer. Behind me, through the mirror, I saw her frown. But you may be assured Laner was quick to warn him off. You were blushing and giggling. My smile became a smirk as she met my eyes through the mirror. Many things make me blush, Lena. Frequently it is you. Are you worried, my love? At the implication she blushed but her frown did not leave her face. That was not a good sign. Worried? Not at all. Ah, said too firmly and too quickly. I rose and turned to face her. She watched me with wide violet eyes, tracking me as I sat down next to her and brought her fingers to my mouth, laying a kiss over the back of her fingers. You know I only have eyes for you. I love you. If you would prefer me not to flirt then I shall cease my flirting, I told. She looked at her knees and bit her lip. What is it? Nothing. Well, no, it's nothing. When I merely raised an eyebrow, she sighed. You aren't doing it to make me jealous, are you? What does this girl think of me? Of course not. I assure you that whilst I do find your jealousy somewhat pleasing, I would never do it on purpose. I am not given to mind games, I told her, giving her hand a squeeze. She sighed. I did not mean it as an insult dash. I did not take it as one, I said far too quickly. She gave me a grimace and I gave in. Very well. I did but I shall not hold it against you. Please understand, I thought Damon the dashing prince. I knew he could be thoughtless and, at times, vicious, she said and I tried my best to hide my surprise. Even with the appalling job I did, she did not notice. She was staring at the wall, a distant look in her eyes. But he could be spontaneous and romantic. He would quote poetry or tell funny stories. For all you warned me of what he was, I did not see it. He could charm the small clothes from a septa, I said and she smiled but there was no joy in it. I know you must not believe it but I do know what people are like. I know when people lie. When they are discomfort or afraid dash. I am aware that you are incredibly observant when you wish to be, I interrupted, feeling like I needed to point out I did pay attention to her. That I did not believe her to be entirely brainless. But I did not see it in him. I did not see his true nature. Had you asked me then if I believed he could burn Spicetown I would have laughed you from the room, she protested. I did not see it and I let him. She paused then, her violet eyes finding anything in the room but me. After Spicetown, after everything he said and everything I was told, I had reason to think over our romance. I remained silent. I did not think she wanted to hear my opinion on Damon once more. You knew him from when he was commander of the City Watch? From before the Queen's death? I did, I said slowly and she nodded. You spoke of Miseria like you knew her. That took me by surprise but I couldn't parse the look on her face and she would not face me. I knew of her. Mostly from Alicent. She grimaced at that. He truly, forgive me, I know you said he bedded her but, did he truly, she asked. She was taken with him the moment she saw him. Just as he was with her for a while. Yet he bored of her eventually. Just like he bored of many things back then. By the time he became commander their relationship was almost burnt out, I told her. That was when he met Miseria, she said, and it was statement more than a question. I believe so. They called him Lord Fleabottom back then. Prince of the city if you were being polite. There was not one brothel or seedy tavern that did not know him. She had to know this already. She was revisiting old stories and rumors because she was putting something off. But what? I admit father was keen I not hear too much of his exploits. Yet I heard enough from Alicent, Otto and mother to put two and two together. Did you ever meet Miseria? Could you recognize her if she were described to you? Lena asked. Now that did surprise me. She caught my look as well because she turned towards me as I struggled to parse her meaning. I never met her. I heard her described as the pale Wyrm but, well, that she is pale and of descent from Lys is the best description I have, I said when she merely continued staring at me, waiting for an answer. Lena, what is this about? I think I met her. Miseria? In what setting would Lena and Miseria ever meet unless, did you go to some sort of brothel? From the color she turned, my guess was dead on the mark. She caught my hands and pulled me closer. I did not mean to. He invited me to see Bloodstone sights. We went for a walk on the beach. He said we could get a drink nearby, I did not know. At her panic, I pulled her close. We stayed like that for a while until I felt some tension leave her body. Then I pulled back. Speak. You will not earn my anger. You could not. Not now. When she looked unconvinced, I added. I love you. I went to Bloodstone. You know that. I was eager. I would see battle, it was new and exciting. I remembered your warnings though. And Laenor's. Even Mother's. I was determined I would not be Father's weapon against you. That I would not become Daemon's tool, she started. But he was kind. Funny. Charming. He helped me adjust to Bloodstone, he took me flying, pointed out the nicer delicacies. He made it clear he was interested in me. I was interested by that interest, by his intensity. Because he was the first man you'd ever looked at and seen yourself with? I asked, trying to understand. She shrugged. I do not know. I know he is the only man I've ever liked, she admitted. But I was still determined. I was still determined I would not. I swore an oath to you and I told myself I would keep it, even if I could not see the monster you portrayed him as. That had to have changed somehow, I stated, trying to keep my voice level at the reminder of that broken oath. Gods, she was clearly trying to tell me something incredibly personal and here I was on the verge of raging again. We went to a tavern. It was not a tavern. Or maybe it was Dash, she shook her head. There was a woman dancing there. Daemon was, openly appreciative of her. She was, pale and lysine. You think that could have been Miseria? I was given the belief she stopped dancing the day Daemon took her as a mistress, I mused. Miseria was clever, dangerous and ambitious. She did not dance a day longer than she'd needed to. Instead she'd ingratiated herself at Daemon's side. Rumor had it his men even took orders from her on occasion. In retrospect, that was probably how Otto's men died. If they had believed Daemon's men to be on their side the resulting fight would have ended badly for them. Like a certain future northern lord. But the description? Pale, lysine, it could be her, she insisted. I will admit the point. It could be, I said, giving in. Lena nodded. We drank together, Daemon and I. We talked of dragons and flying. Of travel, myths and legends. She paused and took a deep breath. He bought me dance from her. I think I was drunk enough. I must have been looking too intently. He said it was a jape. Anger stole my breath away and judging by the frightened look I got Lena had completely misinterpreted it. She forged onward as if she feared I were moments away from ejecting her from my room. He knew. He knew from the moment she approached. Rhaenyra, I think he knew from before we left on that walk. The way she spoke was almost as if she were begging me for something although for what I did not know. Of course he knew, I said, fighting for volume control. He knew. He played you. That bastard. If I ever see him again I will geld him and make him eat it. She hung her head and stared into her lap. We argued once. A terrible argument. He was. I drew back. I told him we should not be, she was on the verge of breakdown again, stopping to gather herself when her voice failed her. The next day he had her play made to me. In front of my father. He threatened you? How could she not have seen everything he was? Then again, was it not like a frog being put to boil? You put a frog in hot water and it will jump out, but put a frog in cool water and slowly turn up the heat. He acted like I was overreacting, that it was not a threat. That it was not even he that assigned her to me that day. I fell for it. I thought I knew people. I thought I knew him. I was so sure I did. Her voice was barely a whisper, but what she actually wanted to say came across clear as day. You think you know me? She flinched. No rage came to me. That surprised me. The implication I could be half as callous and cruel as him would have sent me spiraling into anger in any normal situation. Oh, Lena. She pushed her face into my neck as I pulled her close and gradually, slowly, relaxed as I rubbed comforting circles over her back. I do not want to hurt you. Please tell me if I do, I whispered. And I will do the same for you. If what we are is to survive, we need to be honest with one another. Honesty, she whispered to herself. She was honest about many things that night. By the end of it, I was ready to invent a whole new realm of torture solely to put my uncle through. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.